Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the month of March. We're so excited for what we have already experienced in this new year, and we're excited to continue our Money Mondays as we are winning with the information we received to be able to advance in this year. This is our year of advancement. This is our year of the shift. This is our year of the leap. This is our year of bigger and better. And we want to encourage you today to go ahead and to like and to share. Go onto the YouTube and just chime that button. Make sure that you subscribe and become a part of the Juice Radio and Talk Show managed by Regina Ogborn and Clovis Ogborn. We just are so excited for today's information that we're going to share on financial fraud and cyber security risk. And so we're going to play at this time our intro, but go ahead right now and prepare to get your pencil and pen ready as we go and expound on information that can help you grow your business.
Welcome to the Juice Radio Talk Show. 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 Reality TV's Church Reviews. Let's talk happy love and marriage lifestyle. Come and talk with us. Come and share with us. Come and laugh with us. Come on and pray with us.
Regina Clovis, special guest. You should be following your lead. Bless. Subscribe on YouTube. Listen on podcasts. We live on IG and Facebook. This episode is sponsored by Truth and Triumph Ministries.
So good afternoon, everyone. This is Executive Pastor Tawana Grant. So excited to have you with us on today as we go into another session. Today's session is really on financial fraud and cybersecurity risk. You see this everywhere on TV. You see this everywhere in the news. Some of you, unfortunately, may have already experienced it, whether it's personally or in your business. What can happen when we have bad actors and those who are threats to the solvency of your business, threats to what you have online, threats to what you have as part of your business brand. That's one of the reasons why it's so important just to understand what areas you need to establish so that you can cover your financial fraud potential. Now, most of us, we consider the things that are within the bank as one way of financial fraud. That is so true. Most banks, of course, if you have finances within the bank, they have a fraud liability. And so up to normal banking, like $250,000, they will cover for a fraud event. But in many aspects, sometimes we really don't think about those areas of financial impacts that could occur within our business. Good morning, Bianca. Good morning, Aaron. Thank you all for joining on today. So a lot of times we don't really think about how we need to evaluate financial fraud. How can financial fraud happen or occur within your particular business? So a lot of times our awareness to what could happen helps us to look at prevention, because this is what we want to do. We want to set, along with our other plans that we've determined, our contingency plan, our backup plan, in case something happens. We also want to look at how do we craft a fraud plan to potential bad actors? How do we keep them from becoming a threat? How do we protect our investment? How do we protect our business name? How do we ensure that we are solvent and we don't introduce, sometimes we can introduce fraud even in our own business actions, right? Sometimes we don't change our password frequently enough. So there's very easy ways to which bad actors can attach themselves and assume our identity. So we want to really talk about what are some of those ways that you can protect your business name. So one way is to make sure, again, your business name, especially if it's a common name, right? Make sure that information for your business name and phone number and customer information, make sure all of that information is saved in a very secure location. Make sure that even as you are transacting your business, that your credit card, your personal information, that you are holding and housing it in a safe manner. You want to clearly communicate any financial changes. I love how most of the credit cards now have alerts. meaning when something unusual occurs, they let you know. Especially, I know for me personally, when we've gone out of the country and we use a card, they'll let me know that your card is being used internationally. If you're doing an unusual amount of purchases, I know this to be true too. We had a card for business. We had not used it in a very long time, but we were doing some expansion. And so we were using this card. And because there were subsequent repeat purchases behind each other in such a long span of using the card at all, they immediately alerted me to let me know, is this you? And so a lot of times we want to make sure that we are understanding these policies and procedures, because it is a protection mechanism to make sure that even when you're doing purchases, that you are the person that is using your card. Really want to make sure too that when you look at financial fraud protection, how are you evaluating where you are maintaining the card? How are you maintaining the card and your credit? How are you maintaining information? Certainly when we are looking at ways to keep our passwords, right? How do we add in multi-factor authentication? Multiple ways to ensure that you are the person, especially if a lot of your information is being kept online, not outside of a firewall, right? A lot of times when we are operating in our entrepreneurship, we may not have the firewall protections. So there are a lot of ways. I've actually had business owners that I've had lunch with, a conversation with, who did not even have a password protection on their cell phone. And their cell phone has a lot of their business information. It has their business contacts. Some of you who are like me, you might even store important information like addresses. You might store important information such as contact information, maybe even an account number, maybe even a social security number or a privilege like tax ID number for particular companies. These things are invaluable information to bad actors. They can take this kind of information and use it in the wrong way. And so that's why a very simple way of protecting your financial information is to ensure that everything has a password on it, especially again, because we're in such a mobile world. Please make sure that your computer is password protected. I know in many cases, some of us may be working from a home office or working from a dedicated office, and we feel like that's not necessary because we're the only one that uses that computer. We're the only one that has access. But what happens if you lose your suitcase? Or what happens if you lose your briefcase? You want to make sure that you have password protection that will help you, that will ensure that you have at least because some people, of course, they can break the password. Of course, they can break a PIN number, but at least you have a level 1 type of security connected to what you are considering a part of your business due diligence. Next, want to make sure that you have a game plan for identifying fraud. Know your business. Know we just had most particularly people who are calling now. They'll call and assume identity of others in the attempt to get more information from you so that they can create a profile on you. Know who you're emailing and what you're emailing. Know who you're talking to on the phone and what you're communicating. Because in some instances, they're attempting to get enough information about you to build a fraudulent online profile and then operate on your behalf without you even being aware. Another thing is to ensure to God for security and mitigate risk is that you keep your systems updated, that you keep your systems in the most healthy stance, meaning having some anti-virus protection on them, having the latest or as best as you can afford threat prevention type software available to you. A lot of them are even free online or very small amounts to pay to have. You want to make sure that you're using all of those resources that are available to you so that you can mitigate from those instances that could happen most easily without your awareness. A lot of things can happen behind the scenes without you even being aware. But if you use some of these methods up front, then it's less likely to happen. One of the other things you want to do again is don't be too responsive. That's what we're saying. When people are asking you for information, when people are sending you details, and most of the time, you know, one of the ways I've been able to identify some fraudulent information is when they're saying, oh, you've got to do this right now. or I have an urgent situation. I need you to send the information, or this is your last opportunity. This is your last opportunity. And they still keep sending you the same emails about your last opportunity. A lot of times I want to say this too, which is so critical. When you are getting an email that asks you for information, check where it's coming from. Even though within the body of the email, sometimes you will see a logo that looks legitimate. Sometimes you might even have some wording that looks legitimate. But a lot of times I've gone back and looked at where it was coming from. Who was the sender? It was not a legitimate location. It was not a legitimate identification of a company. It was coming from, of course, a bad actor, someone who was trying to initiate threat and fraud against me. So it's very important that you evaluate, even when you receive that kind of information or emails, that you evaluate it and don't be so quick to respond. Don't be so quick to give out information. Most of the time, your preferred lender or your preferred vendor will oftentimes tell you the degree to which they will communicate with you. Say, for instance, a lot of our resources or sources of information, they will let you know, we will never ask you for your password. We will never ask you for your account number. We will never ask you for any of those identified portions, because we should be able to identify who you are without it. A lot of times when you dial into certain lanes or certain places for information, they say, we've already validated you by the number you call from. And so that is another way to identify if it's a threat, because they don't know you. They need too much about you in order to identify you as the person, as you should be, the representative of your organization. So be very, very careful of that when you're operating. Don't be so responsive. What we talked about already. Don't make sure that you are multifactoring. Make sure you have password protection on all of your digital media, digital accounts. Make sure that you are keeping those in a very safe place. They are just not written on a sheet of paper. And they're just not. I have, and I'll let you know, I have some passwords in my phone, but I X out certain portions because I know what that word is. So I don't have to type out the whole word. I can start with 1 or 2 letters and I know what word I'm using. And then I can start with the very first number, and then I can do a digit, the pound symbol for the rest of the letter, because I use that. So you can use coding for yourself. If you're like me, I have multiple applications where I work in the marketplace. I have multiple applications within our entrepreneurship, and then I have multiple applications or areas that I operate in personally. And so I have a multiplicity of passwords. And so to make it easier for me in most of those lanes, I may have the password in my phone, but you'll never have the whole of anything. It's all coded out. It's all detailed out. So I am trying to prevent fraud and theft, even with having it in my phone to help me recall it. I just need enough to recall it. I just need enough to know which way I went, which way I used. And so be mindful of your password. Make them strong enough so that others are not easily winning to be able to prevent them from being able to get your password and log in. Also, make sure you are changing them periodically. Be very sensitive to your financial information, that you are changing them periodically, and don't use common information, common names, common words, very easily identified. Again, you want to make sure that you are doing these things on a regular basis. Keep track. One of the ways, too, that you can identify financial fraud and understand how you can prevent it is know your business. Know how you normally spend. Know where you traditionally go, so that when you see something up on your cards or you see something up in a statement, you can say, oh, that's not me. That has to be someone else. And the good thing about it, in most instances, they will return that back to you. You just have to fill out the claim and go through the process, which we know is sometimes it can be a little lengthy, or it requires you to do some work, but it's in your best interest. And that's why we're talking about today, how do I prevent some of those things from happening? How do I prevent it? One of the other ways I think is very clear is to know who you're giving permission to. Who has authority to log in on your behalf? Who are you sharing the checkbook or the financial writing of automatic drafts or ACHs? Who are you giving that authority to? Because that makes a difference too. Even if you're going to allow others to have credit cards on the business name or have lines of credit, you own that. You're still liable for that. So you need to make sure that you are monitoring and watching to assess privileges. I love what Dr. Walker would say. When people come into your life, especially in business, they start at a lower level of accountability until you've learned patterns, until you understand their capability to handle more. Sometimes we are guilty of giving a lot of opportunity for fraud and threat to happen because we haven't assessed behavior. We haven't assessed integrity. We haven't assessed their capability to handle a lot. And so therefore we lead ourselves to being more susceptible. We give more room and more space for things to happen until we've appropriately evaluated. How do you evaluate? You look at their capability, you look at their competency, you look at their references, you look at their credibility, you look at their credit report. What is the credit report? And we've done that before. It is a detailed identification of your history. It just talks about what you've done before. The credit report is just a financial instrument that reads the story. It is a narrative of how they've operated previously, or you or me operated previously in handling our finances. So all you're doing is reading the book. I know sometimes we don't want to be hurtful in some instances, but you've got to be able to protect your assets. You have to be able to rightly divide and look at fruit, right? You have to look at the fruit of the person who's operating on your behalf, who's structured, given permission, given authority to operate in certain lanes. Then you have the authority to inspect fruit. You have the authority to inspect and to evaluate and to give feedback and to give correction and to give acknowledgement too when they've done things well. And so that's just part of your role as you look at financial fraud prevention. One of the biggest things is to be vigilant and be persistent. One of the things that happens, and sometimes you don't even know that fraud has occurred because we weren't paying attention. We don't even know that we've incurred a loss until some time period has passed, or even the 30 days of getting the next statement. And that's when we realize that something happened. It wasn't us. I would say that you want to make sure that you are vigilant because it goes a long way in preventing it from being worse exposure. It goes a long way to mitigate it from being worse than what it could be because you've identified it first. You've looked at it over time and make sure that you understand the relationships between how you operate and what's happening in your financial domain, what's happening, right? So some of the things, again, you want to do to help prevent and avoid fraud. Of course, we talked about giving out any financial information, any personal information over the phone. People who are calling, we have a lot of robocalls that are calling now, a lot of email correspondence that is coming now, and things that are initiated by ones who are not a known vendor, that who should have that kind of information. So you really want to decipher and never send out your personal financial information through an email without having it being password protected, or through a text where it could be further forwarded. Don't forget, an email, other bad actors could get in that third-party company that you're working with, and they could have that information. And depending on how they operate, they may or may not be liable. Always use private or password protected Wi-Fi network. Many of us, again, as an entrepreneur, we may be working from home base. Make sure that you have password protected on your Wi-Fi. Make sure that you are, of course, especially with your online banking, make sure that you are leveraging that kind of password protection. Make sure that your computer is safe, your mobile phone is safe. Make sure that you are evaluating, you're reporting all of your statements. Make sure you set aside time. I think this is very important because a lot of times I find myself having to set aside specific time to go through the looking at statements and go through doing the operational portions of the various businesses in support of that so that I can be aware. Also, don't forget, we talked about it previously, ordering your credit report so you can see too, because maybe they've done an address switch on you. Sometimes people who are doing fraud and they are also acting on your behalf, they're having it sent to a totally different address. It's not coming to you. You won't see it without doing some type of due diligence. So if you look at your credit report, you have the opportunity to be able to evaluate if anything is happening that is not coming directly to you. So of course, most financial institutions, they already have some technology that is there. If you're banking, you already have, most bank accounts have alerts that you can set I definitely use them. Alerts on a certain amount, certain amount of money. Thank you all. A certain amount of money. If it's over this amount, if it's over 500, over 1,000, or whatever you want to set it at, I want to know, because I want to know that's me. I want to be able to identify it very quickly. You don't want to get to somebody who has spent thousands of dollars on your account without your awareness until the end of the month, or until you get an overdraft notice, right? You want to know as soon as possible if there has been a large purchase. And so that is a huge way that you can prevent some fraud. Setting up specific, accesses, setting up digital wallets. Some of those things can be of good note, right? But you also have to be very aware when you are operating online that it's not just you. Others are also online, and they are learning more succinctly how to advance in the space of getting to others' personal information. And so today we wanted to share just a few things on how you can more so secure your information, how you can prevent fraud. Start with the basics, because most of us, again, if you're home-based or office-based, there's some areas that bad actors and threats seek because they're most easier to get through. One is through your cell phone and information. One is through your email and information. And so we talked about making sure that you do have some anti-security, antivirus information so that they cannot attach emails. Be careful for what you download and be careful for what you open. We talked about too, getting those urgent emails that says, I need your information right away, or I need you to do this action right away, or log in. Oh my goodness, I've seen those before. We've seen something on your account, and so therefore we need you to log in quickly. No, if something was happening on your account and you got all the alerts, you would have seen it already. You would have seen it on your phone through your alerts. You would have seen it on the phone through your online banking. You would have got notice from the actual company, not an email, not a wayward email or a wayward call. You would have gotten an email or correspondence or notice or an alert from the actual organization. Now, a lot of times too, make sure that you are evaluating where is the message coming from, because even though they may have snapped a logo and it looks just like your organization or another company you work with, they may even have some context in the middle of the verbiage so that it sounds like the organization. But when you look a lot of times at where it came from, you can definitely identify that it is not from the true company. So we also want to encourage you too that be vigilant, be watchful. Make sure that if you are lost, and this still happens, if you lose your phone, if you have lost credit cards, if you have things that are missing from your own persons, please make sure you call. And sometimes I love it. Some of them, they have the opportunity where you can put it frozen. You can just make it frozen, because I've done this. I've lost a card in a coat pocket. And so I've just froze it until I gave myself enough time to look for it. And I found it, and now unfroze the card. But sometimes you need to freeze it so that you have an opportunity to evaluate, is it on my person, or is it did I drop it in the car? Did I lose it somewhere where I can easily find it, or do I need to order a new one? The same as you're operating and monitoring your accounts, as you're monitoring your business online, you want to make sure that you're looking for bad actors. So even as you talk about your organization, especially if you operate where there are orders online, you're making payments online, it's important that you strengthen your profit prevention, that you strengthen your security risk. And that may even call for you to have to look at getting someone to evaluate your organization. There are a lot of different ways to do so. There are some online application capabilities that you can procure to better align for your organization, or you can actually call in some of the organizations that are online that will actually come out, look at your business, evaluate your equipment, evaluate how you do business, and give you a recommendation. And the last thing you want to do is lose thousands of dollars. And some companies, they've lost millions due to security breaches, due to security threats who have attacked them. We even seen that, I think it was on last week, where some of the internet big name companies lost ability to service their clients. And when you're in business to provide a service, and that's how you gain your revenue, you don't want to be out of business. And so one of the ways we can do that is to ensure through our threat prevention, ensure through our security risk evaluation, that we are right setting ourselves against those bad actors so that we have some element of support, some element that we are blocking and retaining security on the information that we have, that we're maintaining privacy, our clients' information. We're ensuring that it is secure. Again, for those of us who may be using, maybe even still, we're writing things down, making sure that they are safe and locked up in a fire safe cabinet. We want to make sure that we're doing all our due diligence to prevent fraud and prevent others from getting into our information where we have the liability and responsibility to maintain them. So I hope on today that you've gained from what we've learned. Certainly, we're going to continue talking about it. Last week, we talked about how we want to make sure that we have a backup plan, how we have savings so that we can pivot to in the event of an emergency. So this just goes along with insurance solvency and sustainability. That's really what we're talking about right now. What do we do to make sure that we can sustain our business? Having a business is one thing. Maintaining the business and growing it is something else. And so we're so glad that you have joined us on today with our Money Mondays. We're going to continue this series. We're going to continue enabling you to gain the information that you need to strengthen and gain wisdom, to rethink. Maybe sometimes you have to have a new idea or a word that is said that might give you another element to enable your business to be strong, to enable you to make good decisions so that at the end of this year, as we said, this is our year to shift. We're shifting to another level. We're thinking in another level. We're thinking outside of the box. We want to advance. We want to grow it. We want to look at how much more we can add into our streams of income. And then how can we sustain that and then build even more? And so one of those things is making sure that we are aware that it's our responsibility as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, even as a ministry. We're operating on certain things where we're looking at security, and whether it's physical or it is online. Those things are very important. How do I protect the asset that I am now responsible for? And so one of the ways that you can do that, again, is looking at fraud prevention and looking at security risk. So thank you again for joining us today. We're so excited to continue in the series on Money Monday. So join us next week on Monday at 12 noon as we have lunchtime learning. Peace and blessings to you. Thank you for coming.